It is Friday, May 3rd, 2024. This is another edition of Football Today. I got my dudes from the Talking Giants world, Justin Penik, Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose. As we start to take you through all the divisions and, kind of figure out where each team sits there, a couple of questions about each thing, each division as we approach mini camps and then the offseason and all sorts of stuff. So we figured this is a good time to get everybody caught up on things, right, Bobby?
Yeah, absolutely. And the AFC North is, it's known as one of the toughest divisions in football. It produces 3 playoff teams, and even that 4th team that doesn't make it is a team that, can, be over 500. But the team at top, I'm the most looking forward to talking about because I have huge question marks with those Baltimore Ravens. I'm excited for it all.
Okay. We will get to it momentarily. And by the way, Penik, you want to let everybody know why we're starting with the AFC North? We just didn't pick it out of a hat.
No, so I figured we're gonna go in order, whether it's once a week or twice a week. We haven't fully decided the schedule, what we're doing this offseason yet. And also, as a little side note, guys, I finally feel like now that now that JM Football is jumping into like more NFL coverage and I'm jumping into more football coverage besides just Giant stuff, I honestly feel like today's episode is the first offseason episode. I know the season's
absolutely.
been done.
There is no. Yeah. This is the offseason of the NFL. We get 2.5 months. The idea that the last 4 months is the offseason, go F yourself. The work we've been putting in, telling me that's an offseason.
No, it's really not, because just the news and everything that's happening. So I'm excited to jump into the offseason with football today, and I appreciate everybody that's going to stick with us through these months too. So why we're starting off with the AFC North in terms of divisions that we're analyzing post-draft, we'll kind of look at their free agencies, look at their offseason as a whole, free agency, draft included. It's because during our power rankings episode, we were able to also put in order what's like the kind of the hardest divisions in the NFL, the most competitive divisions in the NFL, and then we're going to finish off with the easiest / least competitive division in the NFL. And we found that based on the average ranking of these 4 teams, that the AFC North is the most competitive.
All right. Before we start asking questions about the 4 teams, couple of moves that have been made since we were last together. Obviously, the biggest one is that Travis Kelce is staying in Kansas City. He got a new 2-year deal that'll take him through the 2025 season, age 37. Sounds like that's when he'll probably hang it up after that. He gets 2 years and over $34 million. So he becomes the highest paid tight end in the history of the sport. He had never been the highest paid tight end, even though he has had many accolades that have said that he might be the best one we've ever seen. Penik. Is this right on target for Kansas City? Are they doing the right thing? Or is it too much of a, hey, thanks so much for what you've done for us. We don't care if we're overpaying you at this point in the career?
I think it's deserved, man. I think it's deserved. Like, people could talk about Travis Kelce taking a step back last year for his own standards, which I guess he kind of did. Wasn't as many touchdowns. His catches were on par with what he did in 2021. So he may not be the same player as he used to be, but for that Kansas City offense, they didn't necessarily make that huge wide receiver one move. They've added some wide receivers this offseason, but they didn't necessarily make that huge wide receiver one move this offseason. So Travis Kelce, he's got 134, 152, 121 targets the last 3 years, and he's had over 92 catches in every single year. He's going to put up another year where he's going to get close to 1,000 yards. He'll get over 120 targets. He's going to catch 5 touchdown passes. And I think it's worth it for this Kansas City Chiefs offense, 100%. It is also, they should honor him too. Like, if there's one player that I'm okay with giving a little bit of an honor contract, it is Travis Kelce.
Also, the tight end contracts haven't went up as much as other contracts around it. Like 17, when you hear highest tight end contract, I'm thinking, $22 million per year? It's only 17 per year. His last contract that he signed before this was 14 mil per year. So it's this year and next year. So I like it for them. Like Justin mentioned, he is still very good. He's the most important piece outside of Mahomes on that offense. Still, even with the additions of Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. But I think what will be nice is maybe there'll be a little bit less of a load on his plate. Because of those additions. So was last year like a down year? Yeah, but that's only for his standards. Like, he was still, the number 2 receiving tight end in the NFL after Sam Laporta. So he's still really good. We saw it all throughout the playoffs, and they are a team that's guaranteed to make the playoffs. And guys like Travis Kelce, even if they don't have the best regular seasons that they used to have, they are guys that turn it on and can give you that extra juice in the playoffs that they may not be able to give you in a 17-week schedule.
So it's interesting. The first thing that came to mind was the contract that the Lakers gave Kobe at the end of his career. And I don't know how closely you guys follow the NBA, but it was one of
But
those.
That team wasn't contending. That was a true, let's just go out the right way thing.
You're right. And the other part of it was that it did kind of minimize who they could have gone after. And in the NFL, I wouldn't have a problem with the contract at all for Kelce as long as it doesn't prevent the Chiefs from doing business. So, did they sit down and think that, well, we'll give Travis Kelce this money, but we have to move on from L'Jarius Sneed? I don't think that was an either-or situation. My guess is that Sneed wouldn't be here whether they had redone Kelce's contract or not. So that's the only thing I worry about is it going to prevent Kansas City? Because there's a bunch of young guys, particularly on the defensive side of the football, they're going to have to take, and a couple of offensive linemen as well, they're going to have to take care of during the term of this contract. And if they let somebody walk because they've extended Kelce as a thank you, that would be the problem. I don't foresee that, but I'm not a capologist.
Well, and they still need Travis Kelce a lot.
They do. They do.
If they want to win the Super Bowl these next 2 years, they're going to need Travis Kelce. When they lose Travis Kelce, eventually him retiring, that's going to be a huge loss for them. So we're not talking about a guy who, again, it's not just we are talking about him slowing down a bit, but his slowdown is still one of the best tight ends in the NFL, and it's not just even raw production. The page that him and Patrick Mahomes are on, where they literally freestyle, where it's like, what is this design? How did this? And they literally freestyle, and I don't know if Patrick Mahomes will ever have that again, right? He'll have great weapons and great players and be awesome, but I don't know if he'll ever be able to find that where we're just on the same page where we make this shit up on the fly, and I know what you're doing as you're making it up.
Yeah. Now, the Chiefs did give themselves a little bit of an out where there's basically no guaranteed. He has $0
if he falls off a cliff, they
year.
Can cut him before the third day of the league year next year.
Yeah, $2.5 million in dead cap, and then 17.25 cap savings, which there is no guaranteed salary next year. So
yeah, so if he falls off a cliff this year, then they could move off of him,
or they just convince him to retire. You know.
So this is agreed there. So this is a good move for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not simply just paying a guy who's been a big part of 3 Super Bowls and a lot of success.
If they did this around before the draft, or around where they traded Snead, then I'd be like, maybe 1 equals 2 there. But the fact that they did it after the draft and after all, they obviously still need to sign their draft class, but after all the major moves have been done, the fact that they did it now makes me feel like, all right, you know what, this is just good to get Kelce done. You don't have to worry about it.
Yep. So the 3 of us all check the box and say we're all good here. Yep. Now let's move on to the other move, which had been rumored the last time we did a show. Ezekiel Elliott heading back to Dallas after a 1-year hiatus in which he was up in Foxborough and was actually the Patriots' leading rusher, even though he averaged only 3.5 yards per carry. He says, listen, I'm only 28. I could still be the dude here. Do you feel any better about the Cowboys' running game, Bobby, than you did prior to his signing?
No, if anything, this shines a light on how bad their running back room is, right? Zeke, his numbers weren't even good that final year in Dallas anyways, with 3.8 yards per carry. And you say, well, what was the surrounding situations? Well, the surrounding situations, Tony Pollard was way more efficient with 5.2 yards per carry behind that same offensive line. He just had those 12 touchdowns. And then I know last year New England was a bad situation, but he got 235 touches and still didn't hit 1,000 yards. And he had 51 catches, right? They kept on throwing him the ball. Mm-hmm. So you think that would get him across there. Didn't happen. He had a long 17-yard run. He's just kind of done. So I don't mind this for Dallas. But it does shine a light on how bad their running back room is of him, Rico Dowdle, and Deuce Vaughn. Rico Dowdle is probably their best back, even with the addition of Ezekiel Elliott.
I don't understand it at all. But I had heard rumors before free agency that they were just like, hey, we're going with what we've got, guys. Like this is it. So don't be surprised when we don't make any moves. Now, I think to go
I
through
think we all assumed they'd get it back from the draft, and it just never fell that way for them.
But how does that happen? What do you mean it never fell that way? There were a ton of guys that they could have had.
Sure, I like their first 3 picks, right? And then
I do too.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They could have gotten one on day 3, pick 87. They could have went and gotten it back. So I guess you're right. I'm usually not a big advocate of forcing need, but I guess the value did match there.
Yes,
a good well. But I also didn't like this running back class very much. I think it was very filled with RB2s and not a lot of RB1s outside of Trey Benson, Corum I like, and then Brooks, the guy from Texas. But he's coming off an ACL, and the Panthers drafted him in the 2nd round, which I thought was a little high. So even if they drafted one, I don't know if they're solving their running back 1 question. I think they'd be getting themselves a nice complimentary piece.
I don't know.
Look out for Nathaniel Pete from the University of Missouri, UDFA for the Dallas Cowboys.
Have you ever heard someone say, actually, you know what? That's right. In Missouri, they call it misery.
Misery.
Ah.
Who had the point last episode about, because this was so good that it deserves to be said at the top of the show. Who had the point last episode where it says it almost feels like Dallas is taking a gap year?
Me.
Yeah, that was Bobby.
I think we should expand upon that.
Well, we certainly can when we get to the NFC East. But I would say this. Why in the hell would you even think that way when your quarterback is in the last year of his deal?
Right.
I mean,
I
how
think
in the
that
world
might be why they feel that way.
But why? Who in the hell wants to waste a year in the NFL? You're asking guys who are putting their livelihoods on the line every Sunday. You'd be like, don't worry, we'll get to you in 2025. Who does that?
I just think they're tired of the same result with all the talent that they've continued to have and just getting the same result every single year.
But you're also so damn close, man. They are close. Physically and metaphorically. Where they're close. They're close to where they want to get.
And what happens every year, it just feels like a team that is done with Dak, right? And again, this is not an on-paper argument. It's just, it is a meme that every single year we get to the playoffs and the team as a whole chokes, but number 4, EPA per play, top of the league, second in MVP voting, just shrinks in that moment almost every single time.
So don't play the season?
I think they're kind of not going all in. They're taking their lumps this year and then they're going to reset. If it works out this year, then you re-sign Dak and then you start going back at it. If it ends up with the same result, it's time to restart, because being the first team knocked out of the NFC playoffs every year is just not it with the amount of talent that team has.
Can we play the reset button? The Cowboys are not going 4-13, right? We can agree on that. They're not going 4-13. So at worst, they're 9-8, 8-9, let's say, something like that. They're middle
8-9 would be a disaster, but yeah,
right.
I agree with you.
So what I'm saying is, if that's the worst thing that happens, most likely, then they're in the middle of the first round, and then what are we looking at?
A team that bottoms out and gets a quarterback in 2026.
I can't believe that an 80-plus-year-old owner is going to okay that.
Everything is pointing towards that, though. I agree. And I kind of commend them a little bit, because they're not happy with the result they keep getting every single season.
Okay.
But it feels feels like next year is new head coach, reset at quarterback. I don't know what that plan is going to be. If that's hey, we're going to take our lumps for a year and figure it out, whether it's trading down or trying to get more draft capital. It's just, it feels like a team that is tired of putting so much into filling a team with talent, right? Will McClay, who's like their basically their draft GM, continuing to stack this team with talent, and they just playoffs show up and we fall short.
Yeah.
And embarrassing fashion too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you love piling on. God, you are just enjoying.
Well, here's
it.
the thing: is every year I've told myself because you look at the Cowboys during the regular season, and it's a team that's like this is the team that can contend.
Yeah.
This is a team that can contend, and it's the same thing every year, right? And then we're analyzing that team, and you're trying not to look at past year's performance and judge them for it, but at some point you do have to judge them for what happens in the games that matter the most.
And now, because of the Lions' success last year, there's only one team that has a longer NFC championship game drought than the Dallas Cowboys, right?
Yeah, I guess so, and I don't know who that is.
Penik?
The Commanders?
The Commanders is correct.
Oh, good job.
That away, Bobby. You're off to a hot start. I can't wait till you start answering these questions. All right, we're going to start at the top of the AFC North by our standards, the toughest division in the NFL.
Yeah.
Their biggest question going into the draft, offensive line, where they lost 3 starting offensive linemen via free agency or trade. The secondary, particularly the corner position. And does Lamar have enough weapons? Penik, are you satisfied with what the Ravens have done in free agency and the draft now?
No, absolutely not, Rose. I'm worried. I'm starting to get really worried about the Baltimore Ravens. I've been we've been kind of picking at the offensive line, and I've been asking some questions about the offensive line. And
we were doing to be decided by how the draft ends up, basically.
And now let's go into it. Like let's talk some dudes, let's talk some guys, let's talk some starters and guys that are actually going to be around there. So let's start off with their left tackle, Ronnie Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good tackle, right? I don't think he's great. I think he's a good tackle, but here's the main issue. He's never played a full season in his career. He has 6 games, 1 game, 11, and 13 games played the last 4 years, respectively. I think they're projected, the interior is the main issue that I have right now, where one of the starters that they have at guard, Andrew Voorhees, basically had a redshirt year last year after tearing his ACL at the Combine.
Mm-hmm.
7th round pick slated to start at guard this past year. Now, we could look back at this a couple years from now and say, man, what a Ravens masterclass. This guy kind of just fell to them.
And by the way, I think it will. I think he will. Like, he was, Bobby, you knew him coming out of USC. I'm sure you did some work on him.
Yeah, he's the guy who tore his ACL and then did the Combine and all that stuff. But it is a lot, like you said, this could be one of those, like, wow, they actually put this together. But I just feel like they downgraded in so many positions, right? That's where I was like, there's a lot of question marks. And like I said, that even if some of these offensive line guys work out, it's going to be a downgrade, right? You're not replacing Morgan Moses, Kevin Zeitler, and John Simpson with Rosengarten, Falele and Voorhees or Ben Cleveland. Like, I think that group went from a strength to a weakness.
Let me go through the rest of the line, though. Yeah. So, again, Voorhees, already 25 years old, and he hasn't played football in like 2 years. So that could be one of those picks, though. If there's a guy that I'm really interested to see how he's going to play, because we haven't seen him play at the NFL level yet.
Right.
And usually some guys in the interior take a little time to really develop, and he's already 25. Tyler Linderbaum is awesome, so we know about the center. Ben Cleveland had 2 starts last year.
I'm with you. Keep going.
Third round pick from the University of Georgia. I actually watched about half of each start because he played against the Steelers, who's an in-division foe. Mm-hmm. He played against the Steelers the final game of the season. I think he held up well. And he actually faced a 1v1 versus Christian Wilkins the week before, where the Ravens absolutely blew out the Dolphins. I think even Ben Cleveland going up against Christian Wilkins, I think he held up well. I think there's going to be some questions about quickness and how well he can move his feet. And I think he needs this coaching staff needs to coach confidence in him to really, hey, know where you got to be, know your spots, know where you got to get. But I think strength-wise, Ben Cleveland has got it in the NFL. So I'm going to be interested to see how he does. But he has not been a starter yet in his NFL career. And I think he was drafted in 2021 or 2022. Might have been 21. And then one of Patrick McCarry.
Yep.
Patrick McCarry, who's been the swing tackle there for a couple years. Roger Rosengarten or Daniel Falele will be the right tackle. And right now I lean McCarry, since he's been like the ultra swing tackle for them in the last years. He started both at left tackle and right tackle, and he hasn't been bad. So Rosengarten, the guy that they drafted, I think he should sit. And Falele, the guy that they drafted in the 3rd round a couple years ago, I don't think he's gonna play either. So
he's
that
a
is
behemoth of a man, that guy.
he's the behemoth of a man. But I don't love that offensive line. I'm really concerned about it. And Lamar, to add on top of it, I love Lamar, and I don't want Lamar to change any aspect of his game. But with the offensive line getting worse, Lamar already has a very high pressure rate that is responsible because of him. Where quarterbacks can own pressures and sacks that they take, an offensive line can own pressures and sacks that they take. The fifth lowest O-line responsible pressure rate from last year went to the Bengals offensive line. But Lamar had the third highest from a quarterback standpoint. So if the offensive line gets worse, Lamar could be getting hit more, and that could be a problem for this Ravens offense.
And last year was the year we saw Lamar do the most as the drop back passer, and part of that was because of the offensive line in front of him. So I just feel like this Ravens team might be relying on a lot of Lamar hero ball, which we know he can do, and which will get to them to the playoffs more than likely. But I don't know if they're going to be that number one seed, like only team that can beat them is the Chiefs, the team that blew out all those teams last year.
That over 500 record.
Like, it's just so many questions on the offensive line. Your only change in the wide receiver room is swapping Odell for Tez Walker. So you're the same there with Zay Flowers number one, but not a strong room. You lose Clowney and replace him with Adisa Isaac. I don't love that. Adding Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa in the fourth. I like both those picks. I think that'll help. But how are you going to use three safety sets without Geno Stone? How's this defense going to look with the loss of Mike McDonald and Denard Wilson, who went and became the Titans defensive coordinator? So I think there's just a lot of question marks on how does this team replicate the success that they had last year. That there's a lot of holes there, and I don't look at this draft class that they brought in and say they're going to make an immediate impact day one to help this team.
Yeah, they have relied on probably as much as any team where they let go of pretty good talent. And they say, you know what? We believe in our draft system, right? Trenton Simpson's going to take over for Patrick Queen. That's how they roll, man. This is how they do it. It's how they're able to pay certain guys, and they are willing to cut the cord. Them and the Steelers have always been willing to cut the cord on guys. And then we'd rather get rid of them a year early than a year too late and give them a second contract when we really don't think that they deserve it. They're willing to do it, man. And it hasn't backfired to this point.
Yeah, but it leads to years where they're not as good as they were last year, right?
Yeah.
Right. It'll be interesting to see, again, how with now that Greg Roman's not their offensive coordinator, the second year with Todd Monken, as they try and do more drop back stuff, what does it look like? Like, Kevin Zeitler was a Pro Bowler last year. Morgan Moses was a really good tackle for them. John Simpson was good for them. And now you're relying on Josh Jones, who's the ultimate back, and the guys that Justin listed. It's just a huge question mark for a team that doesn't have the best talent around Lamar. I'm interested to see how Derrick Henry looks, right? Derrick Henry can produce behind bad offensive lines. So I think that addition helps. How does Zay Flowers, does Zay Flowers make a good leap in year two, or is the year one player that was really good, is that what he is as an NFL player? There's just so many question marks for a team that was so good last year.
There's a lot of guys that, Chris, like you said, well, this is what they do. And I agree with you. But there's a lot of these guys at one time. And especially on a unit where offensive line, where continuity is required and playing together and chemistry means so much, and knowing, the guy that you're playing next to, there's a lot of it happening at one time, and that's what makes me a little scared about the Baltimore Ravens this year. I think they're going to win football games. I think they're going to win a lot of them. Lamar Jackson's still awesome. I still think they have talent, but it's a matter of when can it all come together for them, and will it be this year or can it be next year?
Yeah, this feels like a Lamar hero ball year for them.
Yeah, which to me, I'll leave it with one negative and one positive. The negative is the one thing I don't love about Lamar's game is that when he does get pressure in the pocket, it feels like he fumbles as much as any quarterback back there. It feels like there's 1 to 2 times a game where he's getting that thing knocked loose. And behind a shaky offensive line, is there a possibility that we're going to see a little bit more of that pressure in his face early? We'll see. The thing I did love is they needed to improve their cornerback situation. And between Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa, who fell to them, I do think that part of their team definitely got better.
Yeah, and that was a group that had been a strength for a while and was slowly declining. So I like those two additions, right? I think that is where they will upgrade this year compared to last year. And like you said, hey, Trenton Simpson, I wasn't the biggest fan of his coming out, but him next to Roquan Smith can be a really nice replacement for Patrick Queen. And we'll talk about Patrick Queen in a little bit too. So like some of their moves, it's just the offensive line. The edge room, they seem to always figure out how to bring pressure, so I won't put too much worry there. And it's just like that. It's that offensive line that to me is a huge question mark. And how does Henry look in this offense? How do we have a lot of faith in that wide receiver room of Bateman and
Nelson
Tez
Aguilar?
Walker? Say again.
Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, Nelson Aguilar. Right, some guys that can get you vertically, but aren't really running the full route tree except for Zay Flowers. And they added Tez Walker, who's the ultimate vertical or bust.
Well, you guys saw it up close and personal at the Senior Bowl when he was dropping every pass the first 2 days.
Yeah, then that was a low point for him, and even then his film isn't spectacular either. It's a lot of Drake May deep balls, and a lot of times he's dropping those too, even though he is able to get open on the vertical plane.
Let's move on to the team that finished second in the division. Even though they started 5 different quarterbacks a year ago, the Browns did make the wild card game where they were blown out by the Houston Texans. And as far as the offseason goes, the Deshaun Watson trade is officially over. Cleveland will not be sending any more picks to Houston, which means I can start paying attention to Thursday as part of the draft. Isn't it the question this simple? How confident are you that Watson returns to the player that he was in Houston? And if he does, will Cleveland supplant Baltimore atop the AFC North? Bobby.
So the question for me for Cleveland is, one, can that offensive line and Nick Chubb stay healthy? Because if it can, you have a good running game. But I want to throw this back at you. You've thrown out the premise of Watson returning to Houston or close to Houston form a few times. And I'm someone who's slow to give up on guys. So like part of me is like, maybe is that still in there? Pitch us on like why him coming off of a season-ending throwing shoulder injury, he can even get close to back to that. Because I'm with you. It's like, how did he go from that to this, right? And he's not old. He's turning 29 this season. Like, can he actually get back to that, or should we just close the door on that of Deshaun Watson being that type of player ever again?
So the if you put on your brown and orange glasses for a second, the last image we have of Deshaun Watson is him leading a game-winning drive against the previously mentioned Baltimore Ravens. That was the last time we saw him, and Browns fans were feeling great.
Yeah,
they were like, holy shit. We just won a huge game where we were down 2 touchdowns in the fourth at Baltimore, arguably the best team in the league. And Deshaun Watson just played his best, most meaningful game as a Cleveland Brown in 12 starts. And then 48 hours later, I get a text when I wake up at 6 a.m. Pacific time. It's the emoji with tears running down the face. And I don't know what the hell. I'm like, first of all, who's texting me this? And it was the guy who I did when I filled in for Jim Donovan on the radio. It was Nathan Zagura, who calls the games on the Cleveland Browns radio network. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I find out, I was like, you got to be shitting me. Like, it felt like it was finally coming together for him and for the team. And I was like, this might actually be the year, because in Cleveland, we don't think that way in any sport, but especially in this one. And to see him have played at that level, and it's only 2 times he's done this now in 12 starts. It was that game, and it was week 3 against Tennessee Titans, where Deshaun Watson looked like the Pro Bowl quarterback that the Browns had traded for. And so if, and it is a big if, he's physically okay, you wonder if in this new offense where Ken Dorsey is leading things, although it's really still Kevin Stefanski, but it is a new offense because he wants to pass more. Can he do it? I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, and I have like everything would point to saying it's over. It's not going to happen. But again, I'm someone. It's hard for me to give up on a player when it's not when it's not like a talent age type of fall off for him. To me, the question is though is this team. The defense is due for some regression, but I still think they're going to be really good. Like, here's what doesn't regress on a year-to-year basis: the fucking talent they have up front on that defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
They are going to get after your ass. Their second-round pick, Michael Hall, like he's going to be someone who can get it in there, be a quick penetrator. By the way, are we starting to see a trend of Ohio State to Cleveland Browns draft picks? Feels like we've had quite a few the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But the question at the end of the day is how far this Browns team can go. Even if Watson's bad or at his best, how healthy can that offensive line stay? What does Chubb look like coming back?
Well, they didn't stay healthy last year, and they still made the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. But like, they're a team that can make a little bit of noise if that offensive line group can stay healthy and keep that running game. Because the running game fell off bad last year when Chubb lost. There was an idea that Jerome Ford would be able to replicate it, and he had that like one long run versus Pittsburgh, and we're thinking, okay, Cleveland, their running game is going to keep churning it out, but it just did not happen. They also invested into backup quarterback and the backup to the backup because they didn't want to have a repeat of last year with Jameis and Huntley too.
Yep.
I have an offensive line related. This could be a dumb question, like especially if you're a Cleveland Brown fan, listen to this being like, Justin, what are you talking about, man? DeJuan Jones needs to start. Is he that good where we're looking at it being like this guy's such a freak and he needs to start?
Who does he start over
Jedrick
though? Wills or Conklin?
So I think it's a good question. But I think the answer came when they picked up Wills' fifth year and didn't try and move him. So it is interesting because now they have seemingly tremendous depth.
And that's a great problem to have, by the way. Like a lot of teams.
And they needed it. Yeah, I mean, they needed it last year. I mean, they were down to their fourth and fifth tackles were starting a playoff game for them. It's an interesting point because they couldn't get out of Wills once they picked up his fifth-year option, and they can't get out of Conklin's contract until next year. And by the way, Jones is coming off of knee surgery too. So it's not like he's a perfect bill of health. And what was the question about him coming out of college?
You took another guy with health issues in the draft, and Zach Zinner out of Michigan, who I like, but again, he got injured late last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Justin, here's some trivia. What former New York Giant is on the Browns' offensive line? I'll give you a hint. He didn't come from a college. Oh no. He made a post about this recently in a different Roy Mbatika, our
International Pathway Program.
We love Roy Mbatika on this podcast. We love the Pathway Program.
Just joined us. We're very excited to get to know him.
It was very funny that the Giants signed him from the International Pathway Program, and he had like one like on Twitter in the last half year, and it was like some viral video from John Boy Media.
You mentioned Nick Chubb. That is the biggest question mark, in my opinion, behind Watson, and it's not close, is when is he going to be available? Remember, he didn't have one surgery. He had two surgeries, and they were at least a month apart. And, everybody says, we all know Nick Chubb works his ass off. That's not the question. Like, if you could be ready just basically strict on how hard you are rehabbing, he would be ready to play football tomorrow. But that's not the question. The area where they missed him the most was on the short gains. And watching a whole full season of Jerome Ford as a Browns fan really made me appreciate Nick Chubb even more. On 1st and 10, he would get 2 yards. And that doesn't sound like much, but it should have been a play where he lost 2 yards. So you're talking about a net gain of actually 4 yards. And that's what would happen with Jerome Ford. He'd always look for the biggest play, and instead of it being 2nd and 8, now it's 2nd and 13. And that totally changes every drive and every play call that you can have. So Chubb, he just does so many little things well. I hope he returns to form because he deserves it. The Browns fans deserve it. It's It's the biggest part I'm worried about, that he doesn't show up until November, and I don't know what he's going to look like.
And that running game can be really good, but like you said, it's a lot of guys coming off injury, and namely Nick Chubb. I'm surprised they didn't try and address running back.
I will say
an
underrated name in this room. Donta Foreman. I like him.
Deontay Foreman. Yeah, I can tell you this. He's
better
always
than Jerome
a guy.
Ford.
He's a guy who, when I'm calling highlights on Sunday, there's like a 3-week stretch where every highlight, whether he played for the Panthers or the Bears, ended up being Deontay Foreman. I was like, Jesus, does this guy have 1,500 yards rushing? And he'd end up with like 687, but they all happened in a 3-week span. So,
he played really good
for
the Panthers when they got rid of Rule a couple of years ago. Didn't do much for Chicago last year, but yeah, he's better than Jerome Ford in my
I agree.
opinion.
I agree. It'll be interesting. Let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We talked about this in our draft recap show. We all three of us felt like they just nailed it for the second straight year, right? Rotunno and Frazier to bolster the line. Roman Wilson obviously adding something big to the receiver room. Does all of this make you feel a little bit better about their quarterback situation?
Bobby, you're going to be a guy that's going to fall in love with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You don't know it yet. No, but you're going to, and I'm going to tell you exactly why.
I'm falling in love with the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers.
You're going to fall in love with them this year. You're going to fall in love with them this year.
You're ahead of your time.
Because you want to know what they're going to do? They're going to run the damn ball. And they're going to run it a lot. They invest in offensive line. They're keeping the investments that they have at running back, right? They didn't trade anybody away for more assets. They were 10th in rush EPA per play on early downs this past year. They were 21st in drop back per EPA. I think they could get better throwing the ball on early downs. And I'm not even going to advocate for them to throw more on early downs, even though I kind of think every team should. But they're going to run the damn ball. And I think they're going to run it better with the upgrades that they made on the offensive line. And I also just have a question, too, of who's going to start at left tackle. Speaking of, which big tackle should start at left tackle, right or left. Because right now, our lads has Troy Fautanu starting at left tackle. I kind of think Broderick Jones should be their left tackle, and you should flip those two. Fautanu on the right side, Broderick Jones on the left. I think they're going to be a team that's going to run the ball, that's going to hopefully try and set up their quarterback for favorable third and short situations, be an efficient offense that's going to chip away. And then, if you can get that Arthur Smith play action, if you can get that big play to George Pickens contested catch down the field, that's what I think their MO is going to be. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly, and that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers motto is. So you want to know what, Chris? I don't even know if I answered your question, but I'm kind of in on the Steelers based on what they did with this draft class. Does all that make you feel better about Pittsburgh's quarterback situation? No, but it makes me feel better about their team situation this year, where I guess maybe it's not even about 2024, like Bobby said. It is about 2025 to kind of see what you have and see if you can be aggressive with quarterback. Do you even have to be aggressive with quarterback with Russ or Justin Fields? But 2024, I think, is going to be old school kind of fun football for them.
Yeah, I just think, like, you start plugging in names. Broderick Jones struggled as a rookie, right? So we'll see how he does in year two. I like Broderick Jones. Fautanu and Frazier, those guys shouldn't be expected to come in and just transform them day one. If they do, awesome. But, like, you got to expect some rookie struggles. I like the Roman Wilson pick, but it doesn't make you feel good about their wide receiver room as a whole. And here's the main thing is, what is their reasoning for starting, like, they declined Justin Fields' option, so they have 1 year of contract of Justin Fields. I don't think Justin Fields is going to work out, but we also just know what Russ is at this point. Like, why wouldn't they just get that year of Justin Fields and run with it? And if it's bad, then you go to Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson comes in and saves the day. So I like where they're going, right? I wish they had more right now on offense to pair with that defense, because you have 4, maybe just 5, just studs on there. I'm excited for Joey Porter Jr. year 2. The inside linebacker room is where I'm like the most intrigued. Patrick Queen, with and without Roquan, was 2 different players with the Ravens. How will he look by himself? You get Peyton Wilson at 98. Like, I think that's a fun pick. So my question is not even about their quarterback situation. It's how much of an improvement is Arthur Smith as a play caller? Because I got a good feeling of what Russ and Justin Fields are. Is Arthur Smith going to get the most out of those two? Like that is he that much of an improvement over Matt Canada? Because Matt Canada was awful, but how much of an improvement will Arthur Smith actually be?
I'm just trying to figure out which player that gets drafted early in fantasy on the Steelers is going to get screwed by Arthur Smith. I just really am trying to figure because he got a few of us
I have
last
my
year who had
guess.
some Falcons on the team.
Jalen Warren is going to be more efficient than Najee Harris.
Yeah, but you know what?
Najee's coming off
at
of 3,000-yard seasons in a row.
But
You
really,
have
at
Cordell
the
Patterson
end,
there who's going to get some touches.
yeah, a handful. You can only run a handful of plays with that guy. We know that. By the way, he's not going to be the return dude. It's going to be Justin Fields. Did you guys see that story?
Yeah, that was
I'm not ruling it out.
ridiculous. Are you trying to start Justin Fields as a running back jokes?
No, not as a running back, but as a return guy.
Okay, but if you have your core, like you're fueling those
It kinda
jokes
is.
against Justin Fields. If you ever even did that one time.
Hey, Jalen Warren's the one who came out with it on a podcast, not me.
I know. I'm not saying to you. I'm saying why would
Could
the
be
Steelers
fun.
special teams coordinator even joke about that?
So I can't. The receiver room, I love Roman Wilson, I really do, but they're thin, still super thin after that. It's just the rest of it.
And
I know
Pickens
that
isn't the most reliable number one, anyways.
No, and it'll be interesting to see how he deals with, I think, being open still and not having Russ throw him the ball, because we know that's going to happen. That is going to happen.
It'll be interesting to see which one is better, because I actually do think Russ will just throw the contested shots. It'll be interesting to see if Fields does that, because I don't know if is Fields going to have the most confidence in the world to just throw it to Justin or George Pickens? I don't know. It's just that offense is still it could go a million different ways. Like that offense has the capability of being the 30th offense in the NFL. It could also be like 18th, and then paired with a really good defense, and they're 10-7 and win a playoff game.
Let's play this game. Does Justin Fields start? Let's set the number at 3.5 starts this year. Penik?
Over just at the week 4
For the
or
season,
just
right?
over 3.5 starts?
Just over 3.5 starts this season.
3.5. Really whispering and talking into the microphone for this one.
It's
I'll
easy.
go over.
It's over. It's over. 4 starts is very doable for Justin Fields.
So what's the number? What would you set it at? Like 5.5? You think it's that high?
I'd put a 7.5.
You think he starts half the season?
I don't know what the Steelers are doing. That's that's where it's like you feel good about the quarterback situation. I don't feel good about it at all. You have Russ, who's at the
Kinda
end of his
kooky.
career on a minimum contract. You have 1 year on Justin Fields, who's all the talent in the world, but hasn't been a good quarterback. Like it's again they don't have the swing of being a good offense, but this could be the 30th
here's the
ranked
thing,
offense
Russ
in
is-
the NFL. Like, are we confident that these guys are 100% better than Kenny Pickett?
I am.
Oh,
And especially when you remove Canada.
Yes. Did you watch Kenny Pickett last year?
Yeah, but I thought he suffered from the Matt Canada. Like, I'm not. But did you watch Justin Fields and Russell Wilson last year?
Yes, but Mason Rudolph was 10 times the quarterback that Kenny Pickett was last year.
I don't know. I mean, Justin Fields gives you that running ability, right? So that's why I would just start Justin Fields, because he's at least going to give you something on the ground. And he has all the talent in the world for his arm. It's just he doesn't see it super well. But I don't know. This offense is not inspiring. Like, all the nice things about their offense are brand new.
Well, Chris, let me
player.
even ask you this, Chris.
Can we agree, though?
Your question comes down to how impatient will the Pittsburgh Steelers be if, even if they're 4-5 and Russell Wilson isn't playing good, but Russell Wilson isn't playing bad, which I can easily see. Hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're going into week 10. Hey, we're 4-5. Do you think that they would have the quick trigger to hey, we're going to put Justin Fields in, even though we're in a situation where if we keep momentum going with Russ, maybe we make the playoffs? Do you think they would pull that trigger in that scenario?
That narrative doesn't even make its way out of September. There's no way with a guy who has started as many games as Justin Fields has his first 3 years that city is going to just sit and be like, yeah, okay, don't worry, Russ. Like, we could be a 500. There's no way, particularly when Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game since 2016 or whatever it's been. Justin Fields will be, if they're 3-3 after 6 games, as long as Russell Wilson isn't playing at a Pro Bowl level, which none of us expect that to happen, they'll make a quarterback change. I don't know if it'll be for the rest of the season. I mean, this to me, I think the Steelers are one of the most fascinating teams that we've got going into the year. Fascinating.
But here's where it's like we talk about them being I want to use success percentage, right? And who's had the worst situation offensively the last 3 years? Chicago, Pittsburgh, or Denver? Outside of quarterback. Probably Pittsburgh, right?
I don't know about that, man. Chicago didn't do Justin Fields anything.
Chicago had DJ Moore and Cole Kmet and like a playable offensive
for
line.
1 year. For 1 year, he had DJ Moore. No. Before that, it was a mess. It was a mess.
Okay, but I just want to do success percentage the last 2 years, rankings-wise. Russell Wilson last year, number 1 at 43.3%. Kenny Pickett 2022, Kenny Pickett, number 1 at 44%. 2023, Russ at number 2. 2023, Kenny Pickett at 40%. And then it's Justin Fields the last 2 years, and then Russell Wilson 2022. So if you take all 3 of their quarterbacks, take their last 6 seasons on success rate, which is like just down success, Pickett's number 2 and number 3 on them.
You really want to pat yourself on the back for that, don't you?
Well,
I can see it.
The point I'm being is like I just don't think these quarterback upgrades are these huge upgrades.
Okay.
Like Kenny Pickett got traded for what? More draft capital than Justin Fields did, I believe, right?
That's crazy.
Russell Wilson was a minimum contract signing.
Yeah, but the Justin Fields trade, all the musical chairs were taken.
Yeah, because no one really wanted.
Seattle also. No, this is the Eagles. Excuse me. I thought I read Steelers of Seattle. 2024 third round pick. 2 2025 7th round picks for Pickett, and then the Steelers also gave a pick swap with number 120.
My main point with the Pittsburgh Steelers, though, is let's keep this defense intact and really good for the next 3 years because I think they're set up in the right direction.
Okay. Let's move on. Cincinnati Bengals.
I think that's going to win the division, by the way.
Okay.
Cincinnati Bengals.
I can understand that. Obviously, the return to health of Joe Burrow is the biggest news, no question. But the defense, kind of under the radar, stunk last year. 31st overall. Do you still have a lot of questions about that side of the football after the free agency and the draft, or did they hit it out of the park, Bobby?
I think they'll be improved as a defense. They still have a really good defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. I think some of the more underrated signings of the free agency were the additions of Geno Stone and then bringing back Von Bell in that safety room. Just bringing back adults to the safety room and a defense that likes to throw a bunch of different looks at you and just not having the mistakes that some of their young guys did last year, just limiting the mistakes in the back end. They do lose DJ Reader, and that's bigger than people talk about, and it's a huge addition for Detroit that people haven't talked about. The questions are just, do you keep Hendrickson and Higgins to me? Because I think if you keep those 2 guys around, I think Miles Murphy, their first-round pick last year, is due for a nice year or 2 jump. And then I think Joe Burrow is going to have that offense humming. I think the Bengals are going to be, as long as Burrow stays healthy, are going to be really good this year.
I agree, man. I think Burrow was playing at, close to an MVP level when they were in that winning streak that they basically when they got on after week 5, they lost to Tennessee 27-3. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And then they beat Arizona.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
They have a big offensive game. They beat Seattle, they beat San Fran, they beat Buffalo, and then they lose a really close game to the Houston Texans, and then they lose to the Ravens, and then that's when, the Ravens game, that's when Burrow goes down. So they were in a hot stretch where they beat a couple really good teams. Seattle, San Fran, Buffalo, and they played Houston really well to the end. I love them, man. I think they're going to be good. I think Burrow has to be Burrow being healthy is the key, and Burrow not getting off to not doing anything in training camp. They do.
And they need to get off to a harder start,
where
too.
Burrow can't get hurt during training camp, where it basically took them 4 weeks for Burrow to kind of get his legs back under him, and then he has a really, really good stretch of quarterback play through the next 5 weeks where he's top 6 in EPA per play, and then he goes on and he gets hurt. So I'm all for it. I love the upgrades that they made on defense. We've talked about it. I think they're not only winners of the AFC. I view them right up there with Kansas City as competitors in the AFC. I may even pick them.
Yeah, they didn't get splashy this offseason, right? Even their first-round pick is not someone who's going to have to come in and start right away. I think they made smart, reasonable decisions this offseason. If they do trade T. Higgins, though, that changes quite a bit for you, though.
Do you think that they'll trade him?
I thought that they would have already.
I thought it would happen on draft day,
thought.
so I'll take the L on that one. I thought it would happen on draft day. And I'll be interested. I would love to hear why it didn't. Is it because the Bengals don't want to, or are teams kind of done trading first round picks for the big money for the wide receivers you got to sign immediately?
I think that's the answer right there. I think that's the bigger deal.
Which is crazy.
And by the way,
because that's been like a trend the last 5 years. It's like, hey, you can if you're in the if you're in the 20s, just trade that first for a wide receiver, pay him, and now you got that guy.
And I wonder, it wasn't just T. Higgins that's asking for a trade, but Trey Hendrickson. That news came out right around the draft as well. I think he's got 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I do think they're equipped to live without him.
Good, though.
You have Sam Hubbard. I really think Miles Murphy's going to have a really nice year too. You have you have some guys there. Hendrickson's their best one, but I think they can survive without him. But I don't think they're losing him either, though.
See, I disagree with you. I think Hendrickson is like the
I think he's one of the more underrated pass rushers in the league.
I think they totally like when he got up there on that big deal. Everybody was saying, "Oh, well, you ought to pay half your salary to Cam Jordan because he's the reason that you got those sacks." And everybody's like, "No, dude, he can play on his own." And there's no question about it. He has had an outstanding stint up there in the Queen City.
Yeah,
I agree with you, man.
But who are they better suited for life without? Higgins or Hendrickson?
I think Higgins. I mean, yeah, because we know that they have to plan without him. You can't pay top dollar to both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So the minute that they drafted Jamar Chase and we saw how great he was within about 60 seconds of playing in the NFL, you're like, oh, man, I hope T. Higgins finds a nice soft landing spot. Even though he's a really good player, they're not going to be paying both those guys. Sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade either, right? I would take advantage of this before the Burrow money starts really kicking in and go for it, right? They've gotten to a Super Bowl and then another AFC Championship game where they were, that close.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trade either one. I would be really going for it if I were them.
This is probably not a discussion for here, but are we going to start worrying about Joe Burrow health-wise? I mean, I know they're freaky injuries, right? Chase Young lands on his knee, and last year was.
They also play offense in a reckless way, 5 wide type of shit too, which puts them in position to get those injuries too.
And he also takes a ton of hits. Like I think he's got to start playing smarter as well. Got to get down. Both Manning brothers. I don't know if Archie coached them this way, or their lack of mobility forced them to do this, but. Like, they would never stand there and take
Turn
a
their
shot.
shoulders.
They'd always see guys and just get down. Yeah, learn to live another play. And I think Joe Burrow's got to get a little bit of that in him, doesn't he?
Yeah, because, it's been, 3 different injuries over the last 4 years?
And then the camp injury is I
by the
think
way,
what really just derails the whole season for them. And that you're not even getting hit during camp.
And they've gotten off to slow starts the last 2 years as well, even when Burrow was healthy in 2022. What did they start 0-2, 0-3?
Yeah, and it's just really tough it's tough for bad teams or even good teams to come back from that. So,
but even then, they make the playoffs last year if Burrow stays healthy, most likely, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Dr. Jamar Chase was all over that thing. Remember when Burrow comes up lame in training camp? He's like, listen, we got you the first month.
Mm-hmm.
Like, show up when you're healthy. And he didn't, and he played through it, and he couldn't move week 1 against the Browns, and people were like, well, that's because the turf was soft and it was rainy. Then he couldn't move after that for the next few weeks, and it bothered him, and I'm telling you, man, I'm going to listen to Jamar Chase on a lot of other things. Does he have investment portfolio advice too? Because if so, I'm going to go listen to him a little bit. All right, so we've nailed these 4 teams. Why don't we? I know it's early May, but what the heck? Let's give division picks.
Yeah,
Penik, you want to go first?
I'm gonna go.
What's your order?
Bengals 1.
Huh?
Part of me wants to go Steelers too. Damn.
No, it's not that hard. Ravens number 2.
No.
Ravens are closer
Bengals
to
1
than they are.
Bengals 1, Browns 2, Ravens 3, Steelers 4. But I have this real. I have Bengals up top, Browns in a second tier, and then like Ravens and Steelers kind of close to each other.
Okay.
So I'm very different from Justin, even though the rankings was specific. I am Bengals, but I feel dirty not putting the Ravens number 1. So Ravens 2, Browns 3, Steelers 4.
Okay. So I too have the Bengals. Wow. We're all just going from. There's always that team.
I know this is
finishes
disrespectful
last.
to Baltimore for them to be the
It
number
is
1 seed
disrespectful.
that blew the fuck out of every team out, and then we're just not even picking them to win the division. It's very disrespectful from us.
Yeah. So I would go Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers, but I also think 3 teams will make the playoffs again.
Agreed. 100. I'm a 3 playoff team too.
Yeah. All right. So that's the way we go.
Nice.
Man, oh man, these hours fly by with you gentlemen. You know that?
I love
They
talking
really
about
do.
the AFC North, by the way. Like, we can
Yeah.
talk. The Steelers are just like the most frustrating team to talk about because there's so many good things, but it also can go so horribly wrong too, and then they'll win 9 games.
But doesn't that make it fun? Doesn't it?
Oh yeah, like I said, I love
possibilities of
talking
them-
about them. There's just so many different outcomes for them, all to end up at 9-8.
All right. Penik, we don't know who's in the on-deck circle as far as the divisions go.
Nope,
We
I don't
haven't
have the
quite figured
spreadsheet
that
open,
one
so
out
find
yet,
out
have we?
next week on Football Today.
I love that. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Continue to enjoy your sporting globe, and we are here for you even during the off season, because here at Football Today, there is no off season. Shout out to producer Mikey. He does a great job putting this show together. Continue to absorb the content coming from your boys in the Talking Giants world, Bobby and Justin. I am Chris. We will see you next week here on Football Today.